I got a couple of things on the log today. The first thing is one of the aggravated assaults on the log. There's actually two different ones, but they're related. So this was in the 1200 block of West 10th Street. It began about 1 o'clock, and then things kind of died down, and then they picked back up again about 2:30 in the afternoon. So basically we had a couple of different groups of juveniles, and they've had problems or issues with each other, and we had one group that showed up outside a house in the 1200 block of West 10th Street. I don't have the exact numbers, but there was quite a few people, I think in two different cars. Some people were threatening others, and then we ended up having a woman that was in one of the cars. She pulled out a gun and started pointing it at people that lived at the house, and there were 5 people that were outside at the time. The oldest was 62, and then the youngest was a 2-year-old girl. So she pointed the gun. Obviously, police were called. At some point, she put the gun back in the car, but once officers sorted everything out, she was arrested for aggravated assault. The gun was found inside the car. I don't think we had any injuries to anybody, at least nothing related to the gun, but we had some other people that were threatened and stuff like that. So we did have some juveniles involved, so I'm not going to be able to give you details of what happened with that, but the woman, obviously she was an adult, so I can give you her information. And her last name is Moeller, Moeller. First is Amanda, Amanda. Middle is Ray, Rae. And she is 39 from Steen, Minnesota, Steen.
And was it someone who was involved with the incident who called police, or was it somebody who was like a bystander?
No, well, I think there was a few different people that called, but it was some of the victims at the house. They were the ones that called police.
Was that related to that incident? I think somebody got hit with a bat.
It's all tied in with that, yeah. But that involves juveniles, so I'm not able to give details on that side of it.
Anybody treated at the hospital?
I didn't see, the reports are still coming in, but the ones that I was able to read, I didn't see anything about injuries to anybody, so I don't think there were any injuries, but I'm not 100% on that yet.
And you said it was 2 groups of people?
Yeah, we had the people that lived there, at least 2 of them that lived there, and then we had this other group of people that showed up. But there have been things that have been going on for a while with these 2 groups, so it just apparently the one group decided to confront the other group and showed up yesterday.
And that's the only arrest that adult woman?
As far as I know at this point, I can't, obviously the juvenile stuff, I keep talking about that, I can't go into the juvenile side of things. I got to wait for other reports to find out if there were any other adults that were arrested. Okay, so we got that one. The next one would be the robbery. This was yesterday evening, probably about 8:30 or so. We had a guy, 2 guys were selling a cell phone, and they advertised it quite a few different areas. I think Snapchat was the one place where they got a response. And they met this person in the McDonald's parking lot on East 26th Street. The suspect showed up and pulled out a gun and hit one of the victims in the face with the gun, and then there was a little bit of a struggle, and he ended up grabbing the cell phone and took off and ran away. So the guy that was hit had some minor injuries with that. The only description they have of the suspect is a black man, about 5'3", and said a heavier build. They were looking for information on Snapchat, but he had already blocked him, so not a whole lot of information to follow up on. I've talked about this before, but we've got an area that's outside the police department, either in the parking lot or the lobby or the vestibule. At that time of day, the lobby would have been open, so they could have done this inside in a safe area. We've seen this a number of times over the last few years, and I'd say primarily it's cell phones that people are either buying or selling that turn into a robbery. Sometimes people will just grab the item, whether it's the cash or the phone, and take off running. Other times that there's weapons involved. So I'd encourage people, if they have some items that they're selling, make the exchange at the police department. We've got cameras that record a spot in our parking lot. There's some signs that designate that. We've also got cameras inside the lobby, so it doesn't matter what time of day or what day it is. Our lobby is open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. If it's outside of those hours, obviously they can do the exchange in the vestibule or outside. If it's on the weekends, same thing, the vestibule and the parking lot, they're free to make those exchanges. It's not going to necessarily prevent crime from happening, but I had to imagine that a lot of criminals aren't going to come to the police department with the intent of committing a crime, so that may alleviate some of that stuff. And we do have the surveillance video, so if something does happen, we'd be able to have some high-quality video of the suspects.
You said it was 2 people involved?
2 victims and 1 suspect.
And the suspect was the one that put out the gun?
Right, the suspect was the one that had the gun and hit one of the victims.
Okay.
Was the victim who was hit taken to the hospital at all, or was he?
It was just some minor injuries. I don't think he didn't need an ambulance. If he was going to go, he was going to go on his own. And the only other big thing I had was in one of the simple assaults, and that was last night, probably about 10:30 or so. Initially, we had a guy that had called police and said a woman had threatened him with a knife, threatened to cut him. And what was this one here? So once they talked to him, he gave a description of her, and she was on a bike. And we had some other officers that found her riding her bike nearby. And once they talked to her, they learned exactly what happened. And so she was on her bike. She had stopped at the gas station or the convenience store. This is in the 1000 block in North Minnesota. Convenience store, sorry. She was inside. As she came out, it started raining. And this guy came up to her and offered her some food for sex and to give her a place to stay while it was raining. When she declined that, he started walking towards her, and that kind of gave her a bad feeling. She pulled out a knife and basically told him to stay away. Once he stopped, she jumped on her bike and then rode away from the area. So once they were able to figure all that stuff out, the man was arrested for soliciting prostitution and then simple assault, intimidation. No injuries from that. She was not arrested or charged with anything.
So the man called police, and the same guy who solicited
Yep.
sex from?
Yeah, it was the suspect that ended up calling police. And obviously the story he initially gave was quite a bit different than what actually took place. But once they were able to sort everything out, then he was arrested. And she had not called police at all, but
No injuries reported, right? Nobody?
there were no injuries, correct. You want his name?
Yeah.
Last name is Brower, Brower. First is Joshua, Joshua. Middle is John, John. And he's 32 from Sioux Falls.
What were his charges again?
It was soliciting prostitution and then simple assault. There, I mean, it's simple assault, but part of simple assault is intimidation, and so it was putting her in fear. So that's where that charge comes from. So we didn't have any injuries with that. If that makes sense. That's pretty much it. The other aggravated assault, that was somebody that was punched. No arrests on that. Burglary, we had some offices, businesses that were entered. No arrests on those. Nothing big from the disorderly conducts. The family dispute and offenses are all reports. Frauds, we had ID thefts and a check. Larcenies, a little bit of everything with there. We did quite a few shopliftings, some unlocked cars. Another catalytic converter was stolen. Nothing significant. No arrests on any of those. Narcotics, no big quantities. Sex offenses are all reports. From the simple assaults, nothing else out of that. The unattended death, nothing suspicious. Vandalisms, we had mostly cars that were damaged, a few businesses, and we did have another catalytic converter that showed up under the vandalism. And the weapons violation, that was some gunshots that happened at 18th and Cleveland. There were 3 shell casings that were found, but didn't have any reports of any damage and no arrests on that. And that's it, unless you guys want me to talk about the crash.
Yeah, can you, Friday afternoon,
Yep.
18 Western?
Yep, so this was we got the call about 3:44 p.m. We had 2 different cars. One of them, our victim was driving westbound on 18th Street, and she was driving it was a Kia, I know that. Kia Seltos, Seltos, 2021. So she was driving on a green light, and as she entered the intersection with 18th and Western, there was a guy that was going south, well, I guess a car that was going south on Western Avenue that ran the red light, hit the side of her passenger car, which flipped the car. She had some minor injuries, was taken to the hospital, more of a precautionary measure. And the description of the car, of the suspect, is a red car. There were a couple of witnesses there as well, but I don't think anybody had anything more than a red car at this point in time. So I know there was some information, some photos circulating on social media. I'm not sure where those came from. I didn't see anything in our case file, but we're still obviously investigating.
Red car, any other leads on the investigation?
That's all we have at this point. So.
If anyone saw anything, contact?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing is, there was in one of the reports I read that there was a city bus that was in front, and so the buses have cameras, so there's a chance we may be able to get some footage, but the investigators will be working at that. So if anybody knows anything, has information, there should be some pretty significant front end damage to this red car. If they see something and we just want them to call police, or they can call Crime Stoppers as well. Anything else? Okay, thanks.